Hey, this is Bailey,
And I'm Timothy.
and welcome to What Sleep Podcast.
Let's get right into it.
Woo. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our podcast.
Welcome back.
Yeah. So, I hope everybody's had a great day. We're about to talk about something kind of wild. There's a lot of information on this, so I tried to compile what I could to make it make sense. So, bear with me.
This is my kind of case, I gotta say.
So it's going to have a little bit of everything. There's death, there's aliens,
Woo.
Death and aliens, so a little bit of two things. But
Two things.
I hope you like it. So let's just get into it. So today we're actually talking about something called Heaven's Gate. Have you ever heard of Heaven's Gate before?
So when you told me that it was about Heaven's Gate, at first I was like, what in the world is that about? And I kind of vaguely remember hearing that before.
Right.
But I don't know what it's about, honestly. Well, clearly it's about aliens and whatnot because you just said so, but
Right. So
I have no prior knowledge of this.
good. I will tell you what I can, what I found, and what I could, kind of compress
I gotta say, I'm excited.
that massive amount of information into.
Because you know how much I love aliens.
Yes.
It's just really sad there's not that many
There's
great
not.
alien stories.
But I think this can kind of, put us into another genre of, not just abductions, but alien influenced events such as this.
Oh, snap.
So
It's not gonna be like one of those, the president's a lizard person, right? Type of thing.
you can't unravel my story before I get into it.
Is that a thing? Is that
No.
Oh. I was like, dang, I guessed it like that. All right, I guess I do have a knack for this. Dang.
So, first and foremost, I'm going to tell you about the the two main people in this story that they're the reason that all of this happened. So first and foremost, we have Bonnie Nettles.
Mhm.
She was born in Houston, Texas in August of 1927. She lived and was raised there by her family, and her entire family grew up Baptist. So she was, religious. And, after she kind of grew up and moved out, she didn't really have a whole lot to do with religion. And she actually moved on to become a registered nurse.
Okay.
In December of 1949, she met a man named Joseph Nettles, who she married and started a family with, having 4 children. So, so she went and started a family, and mostly their marriage was happy. They didn't really have any problems or anything.
Until they did.
Until they did. It did start to deteriorate when Bonnie became interested in kind of more spiritual things. So she was kind of coming back into not quite religion, but she was kind of looking for something to, I guess, believe in.
Okay. Like Buddhism almost?
No, more like ghosts, spirits.
Oh, so okay.
So stuff like that. And she became fascinated by the idea of spirits and would go to see mediums all the time to perform seances so that she could speak with the dead. So that kind of spiritualism.
So, okay.
Bonnie had a belief that a 19th century monk named Brother Francis spoke with her often through these seances and gave her instructions on how to continue living in her life and how to kind of improve on it spiritually.
I gotta say, I've never heard of a monk named Francis.
Brother Francis, yeah, I don't know. It was 1800s. There's probably tens of thousands of Brother Francis's, gonna be honest.
Yeah, probably.
So Bonnie was a part of a group that did get together every Wednesday at her home to speak with Brother Francis. So she had these women and men. I don't actually know who was in this group. Either way, she had these people come into her home where her family lived, her 4 children and her husband, and was like, hey, we're going to go speak to Brother Francis. We're going to hold a seance in our house.
We're going to talk to dead people.
Dinner will be ready in an hour. I guess. I don't know.
That's.
So I would feel a little bit weird about that. I'd be like,
I mean,
all right,
yeah, you should, like that should be book club time, not
right.
Hey, let's do
you
a
guys can go to the
seance.
park or something. Like, I am of the opinion. I believe there might be ghosts. Is where I'm at in my life, and if there is, I'm not about to mess with that. Like, I've said that so many times before. I will not allow people to come into my house and like do a seance. I'm not going to mess with a Ouija board. Like, probably aren't real, but in the event that they are,
If you're gonna invite anything into your house, I'd rather it not be a demon.
exactly.
Zozo. Throwback to that case that we did. Check that case out. I do want to mess with a Ouija board though. Like, how bad can it be if Target sells it?
I don't know. Again, anybody will try to make money off of anything. And if Target can make a buck off of Ouija boards,
yeah, I mean, I guess.
then they will.
If I get a Ouija board, would you do it?
No.
No?
I would not.
No?
No. So along with her newfound interest, she began to study astrology and theosophy and more topics leaning kind of on the occult side. So like she was doing like seances and probably Ouija boards and stuff like that. She got like super into it. In 1972, Bonnie met with many fortune tellers who would all tell her that she would soon meet a mysterious man who was tall with light hair and a fair complexion. And if that isn't the most generic...
I mean, that's what I'm saying. These people are just manipulators.
It's just generic. Of course she's going to meet him. I totally passed over that. But so I do have a picture of Bonnie. This is her. She was a 44-year-old nurse at this time.
Gotta say, you could at least look at the camera. That's not flattering.
She was probably at a party or something. I don't know. It's just a picture of her.
I'm pretty sure back then, like pictures like this, you had to stand still for a solid 5 minutes before
this
it
was in the 70s.
And it's not like let me roll this real quick to reset it.
But yeah, so she's a nurse. She's in nurse garb. She's got black, either dark, like very dark brown hair.
She's got nice cheekbones.
Black. She does have nice cheekbones. Nice looking lady. So that was Bonnie. And next we'll talk about Mr. Marshall Applewhite Jr.
I don't like him staring at me.
He is very creepy. I will give you that.
Like his eyes just met mine and I was like, oh, I am immediately uncomfortable.
Yeah. So Marshall was born in May of 1931 in Spur, Texas. Marshall's father was a Presbyterian minister, and kind of similar to Bonnie, all throughout their childhood, Marshall and his family were like heavily involved with the church and with religion. After graduating high school, Marshall went on to study tons of different things at many different universities, and he received his bachelor's in philosophy in 1952. And he studied theology at Union Presbyterian Seminary in the hopes of becoming a minister. During his time there, he met and married his first wife and the mother of his two children, Ann Pierce. It wasn't long after enrolling there at that second university that Marshall decided to leave, studying theology and schooling basically altogether to pursue a career in music. And he actually ended up moving to North Carolina and became the music director of another Presbyterian church out there.
Huh.
So he just decided, like, I don't really want to go to school to be a minister. I don't really want to study this anymore. I'm just going to go do music things on the East Coast. Like, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay. I mean, making moves, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, do what you want, man.
Yeah. In 1954, Marshall was actually drafted into the U.S. Army, and he served in Austria and New Mexico for 2 years. And then after leaving the military, he earned his master's degree in music at the University of Colorado.
What
so
the heck, bro?
Went back to school,
Just making moves.
Yeah. And then here's a picture of Marshall, which, he's pretty objectively kind of creepy looking. He's got very piercing eyes.
He's the type of person that if you walked into a grocery store and you saw this person staring at you, you would want to leave as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's a fair description. So Marshall began his new musical career by kind of attempting to become a professional singer. And I think he did this like through church and stuff. He wanted to go on and be in choirs or like be a director in
He
choirs.
doesn't look like he could sing.
I don't actually know. I don't know if there's a recording of him singing. There are recordings of him, but we'll talk about those later.
Oh, God.
And they're on a very different topic of music. So, yeah, but his singing career wasn't super successful, and he didn't go anywhere with that. So that sucks.
So he couldn't sing.
So apparently he couldn't sing. After the failure, he went on to teach music instead at the University of Alabama, where he lost his job very quickly at that teaching position for allegedly pining for a sexual relationship with a male student of his.
Oh.
So in 1965, after learning of that affair, his wife separated from him and they divorced 3 years later, which, yeah, okay. Obviously that happened.
Obviously.
Marshall then decided to move to Houston, Texas to continue his teaching career at the University of St. Thomas, where many students remember him kind of being like super well spoken. He's very engaging as a teacher. He was super well dressed. You know, he was like just a charming guy. So that's how a lot of them remember him before he left. And again, his time there was short as Marshall left the job, stating that he was suffering from depression. But a lot of people who have studied this case think that he might have left after enticing another sexual relationship with another student.
My dude, just
So-
stop. Okay, so that's one thing I don't understand. Why would people put their whole career at risk for something like that?
If they're ready to lose the job, that I don't know. I really don't know. There's no sense.
Like,
Yeah, it's creepy. You will lose your job. It's not technically illegal because again, they're adults.
well, yeah, it's not
but
illegal, but
It's a little creepy.
you know, something like that will definitely get in the newspaper.
Right. You're going to ruin your reputation. And he did. So
Oh,
in,
no.
in 1971, Marshall lost his father and he took that loss like super hard. And it sent him into really deep depression. And he ended up like accumulating a lot of debt that was building up because like he couldn't pay his bills. He didn't have his job at the time. His dad just died, so he wasn't going out to look for more work. And he ended up having to borrow money from his friends. Later in the following year of 1972, Marshall met Bonnie.
Oh no. The match made in heaven.
Yeah, right? The fortune teller's telling her that she was going to meet somebody that same year.
Oh god.
So the pair did become very good friends, like super quick. The way that the two met is pretty uncertain. Nobody really knows exactly what happened. Most of what I could research, Marshall had written in his own like memoirs and books and stuff like that, that Marshall had met Bonnie while he was visiting somebody who was like a friend of his that was hospitalized. And Bonnie, who again was a nurse, entered the room and, quote, their eyes locked in a shared recognition of esoteric secrets.
I'm sure he probably wrote that being like, ooh, this will sound all sophisticated, make it sound better to me. It just makes it that much more creepy.
Yeah.
A little bit. Because one, I saw how
Who
he
talks
looked
like
at me.
that?
Well, yeah, but I saw how he looked at me. Now I can only imagine that. And then him adding the whole esoteric secrets.
I
Like,
don't
bro,
really know what that means.
that made me uncomfortable. Like,
So, alternatively, it is actually said by Bonnie's daughter, Terry, that while working at the theater, she'd actually worked with Marshall, who was still active within the like drama theater community in that area. And there was one night during
did this guy do everything?
he was into music. He was into music. He was a teacher. He was in the army. Might have been
Army,
going to
you
school.
know, he got drafted into it. But
Yeah,
it
he
wasn't
got
his
drafted
choice.
for 2 years, right? But I mean, he was in it. So, but yeah, he was working at this theater where Bonnie's daughter happened to also be working. And there was one night during a drama class.
Just so happened?
Could have been planned.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Interesting.
But there was one event in drama class where a student got himself hurt in the theater, and Marshall was actually the one who took him to the hospital where he met Bonnie. I mean, you could have a conspiracy theory here, but I think maybe it was just a natural thing because they didn't.
Coincidence? I think not.
They didn't really need to stage their meeting, you know.
Well, they didn't, but doesn't mean he didn't.
I mean, maybe. You know, I don't know. Anything could have happened.
I mean, it just seems like a really odd series of events.
Yeah, and I think I was reading
And
something.
If her daughter did stuff for the theater, I assume that either Marshall probably talked to her or overheard her talking about her mom.
Well, I'm pretty sure that there's one of Bonnie's other children. I think her son did say that he believed that they had actually met at the theater and not really at the hospital. You know what I mean? So he might have like had this whole elaborate. I took the student to the hospital where I met the love of my life because I'm such
planned it.
because I'm a helpful person, and that's where I met the
That's
love
probably
of my
what it
life.
was.
You know?
He probably did that.
That's
like,
what I
let me
kinda
look at like
feel.
a special person.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing to,
Look how great of a guy I am.
After they met, Marshall asked Bonnie to do an astrological chart on him, which honestly, personally, I have no idea what that means. I assume
it's zodiac.
Well, I know that there's so many more things. Like you can have like a moon sign.
Not zodiac,
and
horoscope. I don't know why I said zodiac. Zodiac sign, same thing.
It's the same thing.
The horoscope specifically.
Yeah.
I assume is what that's referring to.
Confuses me. I don't know. So after this reading, the two claimed to experience an instant spiritual connection. And it was at this point that Marshall decided Bonnie was, quote, to be the sage and he the speaker.
Why does he have to make everything sound creepy? Like, that's just not...
He's an intellectual.
That's not what people say.
So Marshall also believed that he felt he had met and knew Bonnie from a past life and that they had known each other for a very, very long time.
Okay.
This is the point of the case where things start to get wild. Are you ready?
Oh, God. I don't know. Am I ready?
So Bonnie told Marshall that he had a divine assignment and that their meeting had been foretold by extraterrestrials.
Is this where Scientology started?
It is very similar to Scientology. A lot of people note that it's very similar to Scientology, but it's not the same thing. So during this time, it is worth noting that Marshall had begun reading into alternatives to like traditional Christian doctrines. Whatever Bonnie was saying to him was probably super believable, and they just kind of fed off of each other and like came up with their own sort of, I would say religion, but it's mostly based off of like Christianity. So it's their own sort of belief system is what I'm going to say it is.
So it's Christianity rather than angels, it's aliens.
Yes and no. So it's not like they don't believe it's little green men aliens. They believe that these beings from another planet are going to be the catalyst to what's going to happen before I spoil anything. So they think it's beings from another planet. Obviously, yes, that's aliens, but it's not so much little green men and not so much aliens or not aliens, angels, but they do believe it's a heaven.
Okay.
So we'll go into that in a little bit, but I kind of want to set up how they got to that point. And then I'm going to tell you all about it. He did claim, Marshall did claim to have several visions, one of which he was told that he was, quote, chosen for a role like that of Jesus Christ.
Uh-huh.
In the sense that he was sent to Earth. So he didn't believe that he was a human at this point. He believed that he was a being that was put into a body or what they call a
Vessel.
Yes, thank you. Into a vessel to gather followers to bring them back to what they called the next level or heaven.
Oh, the next level. What is this? Like Pac-Man?
So,
level 2.
On January 1st of 1973, the new friends, Bonnie and Marshall, left their respective homes together, both leaving their families and essentially just kind of cutting them off. This is like when...
Even the kids?
Even the kids.
What?
Well, I mean, so Marshall entirely cut them off, and pretty much they both dove so far deep into this new belief system that they didn't really... Even Bonnie was just like, I've got kids, but she didn't really talk to them or anything, She was more focused on this new thing for her.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think her oldest at the time, I believe, was either 20 or 21. And then she had 3 younger kids, but I think they were all in their teens at this point. So it's not like children. It's still really messed up.
But I mean, like the fact that, you're used to having your mother, then all of a sudden just...
Yeah, mom's off to do whatever.
Just runs off with this guy and then just completely cuts all ties with you?
Basically.
Like, I don't care how old you are. I feel like that's
traumatic.
That's just gonna mess you up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. It is traumatic.
Jeez.
So it was at this point that the two established what is called Heaven's Gate. And Heaven's Gate is the belief system, the community, the following, whatever you want to call it, that they're creating. And they developed it as equals. So both of them were the leaders. Both of them had their own role to play. They could be different, but they're both respected as, numero uno, basically. Essentially, Bonnie was kind of the brains of the operation, quote unquote, and Marshall was the speaker. So
this isn't like Waco 2.0, right?
No, that is referenced in this.
When you said that, like that was just like my immediate thought was just Waco.
Yeah, that is referenced in this. It's pretty similar. And this is actually, Waco actually kind of played a role in this, just a little bit. And like I said, Marshall had entirely broken off contact with his family, and Bonnie's husband at this point divorced her and took custody of their 4 children after the two had moved in together. Many people do speculate that the dynamic of the relationship between Bonnie and Marshall was heavily influenced by Bonnie, that Marshall was kind of at such a low point in his life that he was easily persuaded by her, like, quote, like new ideas, because he was looking for a new path. His dad died.
He's probably just looking for anything
right.
to cling on to.
Basically. And unfortunately, that's where they get a lot of their followers. Is it's a lot of people who are kind of like at a low point in their life and need something, which, you know, is a way that cults...
Social engineering.
Yeah, is a way that cults obtain followers, recruit followers, you know, whatever you want to call it. The two did begin a few business ventures together. Firstly, they opened up a spiritual bookstore called the Christian Arts Center.
I don't know why, when you said they opened 2 like business ventures, I don't know why, like the first immediate thought I had was like they opened up like Burger King chains.
Oh, no.
I don't know why. That was like what immediately popped in my head.
And they also launched classes on mysticism and theosophy called No Place. Like, you know something, but it's like No Place. Very weird name, kind of a play on words. These didn't last long, though, and they both quickly closed these programs, but quickly, like, kind of went under. And in February of 1973, the two decided to travel and bring their teachings on the road, bring their beliefs to people throughout the Southwest of America. After years of education and a common belief between the two, they developed a basic outline for their new organization. They based the new belief system on the teachings of St. Francis of Assisi, Helena Blavatsky, R.D. Laing, and Richard Bach. So they traveled with the King James Bible and focused on passages from the New Testament teachings about Christology, asceticism, which is frugal living and like deprivation of pleasures, and eschatology, which is the theology of last things, or kind of like
the apocalypse,
you know, kind of the end times,
God's judgment.
So both Marshall and Bonnie believed that they had been chosen to fulfill like biblical prophecies and that they have been given higher level minds than other people.
This
so again,
this does sound like Waco.
Right. So it does kind of come back to the whole thing from earlier where Marshall was like, I am not a human the way that you guys are. I am a being that was put into a vessel and I'm here to take you guys with me, basically. So
okay, bud.
To gain support and a following, the two wrote pamphlets that described the reincarnation of Jesus as a Texan. And by reading it, it seemed that the way that they portrayed the reincarnation of Jesus would lead people to believe that Jesus was Marshall. So it was things like, and he will come back as a tall blonde man who speaks charismatically, and he will lead you to, you know, a better faith or whatever, you know. So they were they kind of worded it to make it to where people would assume that Marshall was Jesus. So Marshall and Bonnie would also go and visit churches and spiritual groups to speak about their quote unquote true identities. They believed that they were the two witnesses described in the book of Revelation and often referred to themselves as, quote, the two or the UFO two. And they believed that they would be killed and then restored to life in the presence of their followers and transported onto a spaceship. So they referred to this event in the future as the demonstration, and the demonstration would prove without a doubt to everyone that everything they were saying was the truth.
Well, I mean, listen, you're literally banking on one event happening, and if it does happen, congratulations. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're so great," but then it doesn't happen. You're like, "It'll happen eventually. One day it's gonna happen. Might not be in your lifetime, might not be in my lifetime, but we're gonna find out.
We'll find out."
And it's like by then.
So obviously, not a lot of people bought into that, and their claims were pretty much just dismissed.
Good. They're dumb.
There were, however, some of those people that did believe every word they said.
Of course.
And Marshall and Bonnie would contact the extraterrestrials requesting the arrival of quote-unquote like-minded followers. And those like-minded followers did end up showing up at some point. They published a lot of advertisements for their meetings and invited people to come, come check out our message, see if it's something you're into and join us, that kind of thing. So people did show up, and these new quote unquote disciples were called the Crew.
Oh my God.
So original. During their meetings, I don't know.
Such a basic name.
I don't know. During their meetings and events, they spoke as representatives of beings from another planet who could deliver the followers to what they called the next level.
Ready Player One.
And that they were seeking participants for an experiment. The next level was an experiment that would bring believers to a higher evolutionary level. They were able to gain followers after they were invited to speak to New Age devotees in April of 1975 in California. There were about 50 of these attendees that did actually become their followers, which is a lot of people. And they did actually get more followers at colleges all around the West Coast. I think they gained another 30 followers from just driving around.
God.
In 1975, Marshall had begun going by the name of Bo, and Bonnie took the name of Peep.
Really?
So,
Bo Peep?
Bo Peep. Cute, right? At this point, they had accumulated between 70 and 80 followers, and this is when the leaders began to enforce their beliefs and teachings with their new followers. They believed that complete separation from earthly desires was a vital part of ascension to the next level, and members were told to leave behind friends, family, media, drugs, alcohol, jewelry, facial hair, and any form of sexuality.
Wait, hold on. Why does facial hair go into that? It's literally just something your body grows.
Maybe Marshall couldn't grow a beard.
I can't.
So maybe he was like, if I can't have it, nobody can.
I mean, honestly, that sounds like his level of petty.
So all followers were required to take on new biblical names, and eventually that went from biblical names to demanding that they take on a new name that involved the last 3 letters of ODY, and the first 3 letters had to be consonants. So it would be names like RKKOD, which I don't know how you would. I guess that's Ricody, or JMMOD. So Jamodi,
Lavodi.
Lavodi, things like that.
That's just dumb.
I don't understand. So the new group then went on to become nomadic and kind of became more secretive about their beliefs and practices. So they were no longer...
Red flag. This is why? You're all about ooh, come to this meeting. I want to spread my beliefs. Let me
Right.
get new followers. And all of a sudden you get there, you're like, all right, total secret now.
Well, at this point, I could see that being a thing because Waco happened around this time. So, and it was known that Marshall was becoming increasingly paranoid about the government coming in. Well, that's how Waco kind of plays a part in this. I'm sure it influenced
Well, I mean, as long as you're not, stockpiling weapons, I don't think you're really going to be on the government's
Nothing
radar.
like that. So they didn't really have much in the way of literally anything, because again, a thing with them was earthly and worldly possessions weren't really allowed, and they would go and sleep in remote campgrounds with not much more than bread to eat most of the time.
Wow.
So that's just kind of how that was developing into more dangerous practices.
So essentially they're living 1400s peasants.
Very nomadic, yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about their beliefs.
Oh boy.
So this is what Heaven's Gate pretty much condensed down to what I could put into an episode is. So the group was only available to adults over the age of 18, and members were expected to give up their worldly possessions to live an ascetic life without indulgence. Everything the group had was pretty much shared amongst everyone else, even if it was very little. So whatever food the group got, everything had to be split. If somebody made money, all the money was split amongst everybody else. Pretty much everything was split.
All right. I guess that's...
The extremes that the members went to maintain their ascetic life involved surgically castrating the men so as not to fall victim to their worldly sexual pleasures. They literally, so it started out with one of the group, not Bonnie, but another person in the group was a nurse, and she performed a castration on one of the other members. And he actually ended up almost dying. So he lived. But they then went on to pretty much take like any money that the group had and sent the men to go and get surgically castrated at like hospitals at this point. Fun fact. Which I don't understand why any hospital would perform a castration unless it's like cancer or like
how do you just
gender
walk in?
reassignment.
How do you just walk and be like, yeah, can you castrate me?
Like unless it's like gender reassignment.
Now,
or
when
if
they say
it has
castration, do like they mean like
The whole thing.
vasectomies?
No, the whole thing. Gone. All of it.
Okay, so
You're gone.
that's not going to stop your hormones.
Yeah, no, it's not. I agree. It's stupid. But this is the logic that they went through. This is the extremes that they went to. And it gets worse.
It gets
worse.
God. I bet you every guy did it except Mr. Marshall.
He did it. He was one of the first.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
But he went to the hospital to do it. He wasn't the first. Some unfortunate guy almost died.
All right. Cool.
So all of this was happening in like the mid to late 90s. But in order to pay for these procedures and necessities, the group had begun a business of website building and maintenance called Higher Source. After realizing the potential the internet held for recruiting new followers, they developed their own website called heavensgate.com, which is still live today, which is what we just looked at, and it is an eyesore.
Like, it hurts to scroll through.
But it is there if you guys want to go check it out.
Obliterate your eyeballs.
So the members did believe that Earth would be recycled before 2027.
We can't even recycle here.
And the only chance to save their consciousness or soul was to leave their human bodies or vessels.
So die.
They didn't have to die, but that was a way. In the beginning, Marshall and Bonnie told their followers that a spaceship would come to Earth and they would all be taken to heaven, which is what Marshall referred to as the next level.
This is a weird amalgamation.
It is
of Waco and Scientology, bro.
In mid-1976, the number of followers had fallen as people became obviously skeptical and decided to leave the group. And in June of that same year, Marshall and Bonnie, now going by the names of Joe and Ty, or T, they planned to take their followers to Medicine Bow National Forest in Wyoming to a spot where they promised them a UFO visit from the extraterrestrials from the next level or heaven.
Okay.
This was obviously probably to keep their interests piqued, but notably the trip was canceled and the remaining followers were split into two groups. And these two groups were referred to as star clusters, because why not?
Yeah.
So this actually went on for the next 3 years, with them moving from campground to campground, and these clusters, and they usually camped out in like Texas. So all of this is going on pretty much in Texas at this point.
So we're back to Texas.
So they were all around the West Coast, but they ended up in Texas, basically, at this point. They do go back to California. It's a little confusing. Like I said, there's so much information that I had to try to compress and try to make sense of. So dynamics were changing, and Marshall slowly began to decrease his physical contact with the followers, choosing to write them notes that were delivered by his assistants instead of actually speaking to his followers. Friendships between the followers became discouraged as Marshall was becoming paranoid that they would rise against him and rebel. And so at this point, they were pretty much, like Marshall and Bonnie were pretty much trying to isolate them even more, even from within the group. Because remember, they've already lost their friends, family, jobs, children, like all of that, even their beards. And at this point, they couldn't even be friends with each other just because of how paranoid he was becoming. The followers were also not allowed to speak with anybody outside of the group, the original established group. And the only time they lifted this rule was to allow them to see their families for Mother's Day to convince those families that they were safe and they were happy in the organization. And they were all instructed how to do this. They were told, like, hey, tell your families we're at a camp to go and learn about web design. I think that's the excuse that Marshall told them to tell them.
It's such a sketchy thing, man.
It is very sketchy. It's confusing. So in one instance in the late 1970s, Marshall and Bonnie told their followers of another promised visitation from the extraterrestrials. Marshall and Bonnie did instruct the whole group to actually wait outside like all night for the extraterrestrials.
Okay.
Nothing happened.
No. To be expected. It's almost like this whole organization is a lie.
So actually Marshall told the whole group that waited outside all night, that this was just a test to see how loyal the followers were.
What a cop-out response.
Right.
It's literally anytime he does this, it's like, if it happens, cool, I win. But if it doesn't happen, I was testing you.
I was just testing you.
It was a test to see how loyal you were to my cause.
Right. And
he did this makeup.
He did this like multiple times too. And every time he's like, this is just a test to see how like, I wonder if he was in his camp. I don't know if they had tents or like a bus or something, but I wonder if he was just kind of sitting there and he's like, you know, I'm feeling an alien invasion coming on. I'm just going to tell them. And in case it does happen, wow, I'm amazing. But if it doesn't. Could you imagine
if they had the game Destroy All Humans back then?
Moving on a little bit past the whole beliefs and like implementation of those beliefs. Bonnie was diagnosed with cancer in 1983, and she actually had her eye surgically removed in order to treat it. It wasn't effective, though, as the cancer had actually already begun to spread. And Bonnie had actually refused radiation treatments or any further medical care, as she didn't believe in the doctor, and she was saying he was ignorant. My thing is, she was a nurse.
Yeah.
Why don't you trust the doctor?
And you clearly believed him enough to get your eye removed.
Exactly. So both she and Marshall believed that neither of them could die, as their positions in the group as speaker and mystic prevented it, and that they would instead be ascended.
Clearly not.
So
like you got cancer, my dude.
She died 2 years later in 1985 under the name of Shelley West at the hospital. The shift in belief kind of happened here. Marshall told his followers that she didn't die, but she was actually ascended, that her quote-unquote broken down vehicle was left behind, and she had been taken to the next level and would continue to aid them from there.
Like, you know,
so that's how we got around her dying.
You know, like, do what you need to do to make yourself feel better during, like, you know,
your friend's death,
grief moment type of thing. But come on, don't you know, bring others into it like this.
Yeah,
like, come on.
So obviously, Marshall became extremely depressed. And many of his followers kind of took pity on him, and, you know, they encouraged him to keep going, to get better. You know, it'll be okay, pretty much. Probably a dangerous thing for him, though, as he started to get, like, really bad as far as the whole cult organization went. Because he was like, yeah, like, I'm really good at what I do. Let's take it a step further. And they did.
Oh, no.
He began to identify Bonnie's new form as, quote, the father. And he believed that she had actually taken on a higher spiritual form than he did. So this kind of made a new hierarchy of Bonnie was now kind of a god. He was Jesus. And then they were the followers. So that's kind of how that shifted.
Oh.
And he was told...
So this is literally just like a retelling of the events of Jesus Christ, but like...
Also
with aliens.
Also aliens in Scientology. Pretty much. It's a little...
This is a amalgamation of a bunch of different things.
It is insane. And he actually... So again, like, he told the followers that they were to refer to new Bonnie as the father, and she was now a he. That's how they were to refer to Bonnie.
Hey, it's 2021. It's totally fine.
So after Bonnie's death, the beliefs in the group changed when it came to ascension as well. Marshall began to speak that ascension did not only require taking of your body, but it could also be spiritual. Because, you know, Bonnie died and he had to come up with some way to make it make sense.
God.
The followers would be given a new body on the next level once they ascended, as the planet that the next level was at required them to have a different form.
Okay.
And his paranoia grew, and he began to talk about the Earth's resurrection in a way that it would happen as an apocalypse. And their group were the only ones to be saved after they were ascended. According to Marshall, there are 4 ways to ascend. First way is by physical movement onto a Tela spacecraft and transferred into a next level body aboard the craft, where the group would be biologically transferred into new bodies as perfect beings. Tela is an acronym for the evolutionary level above human. So more next level kind of stuff.
Okay.
So the second way you could ascend was a natural death, an accidental death, or death from a random violence. This is where the graduating soul would leave the human container.
This is such a weird name.
These are all notes from him, by the way. So these aren't like...
That's just such a weird way to
container.
Call a body. I mean, it's not wrong.
The third way you could ascend is outside persecution that leads to death. And this came after the Waco, Texas incident. Marshall was super paranoid that the government, of course, would murder all of them. And the fourth way you could ascend was willful exit of the body in a dignified manner, which is what they did.
Oh.
And here's what we get to the end of this episode. We're going to wrap it up by telling you exactly what happened and why this became such a widely known case. In October of 1996, Marshall and his followers rented a large mansion that they dubbed the Monastery in Rancho Santa Fe, California.
How do they get money?
They paid $7,000 in cash a month, paid for by the followers' life's savings. And likely families were probably sending the followers money because, you know, they're still your family. You want to make sure that they're okay. So
listen, if anyone I knew went on to a cult like this, don't ask me for money. Sorry.
I would try to go get them. I would.
Oh, I mean,
not
yeah. I'm
let them leave.
gonna be like, you okay?
So that same month, they had also actually bought alien abduction insurance that covered up to 50 members that would pay out $1 million per person. And this insurance covered abduction, impregnation, or death by aliens.
Oh. Hold on. So you mean to tell me I can just walk into like Progressive and be like, hey, let me get that alien abduction insurance.
This is most likely some scam artist who is making bank off of people like this. Making bank.
Okay, so even if... Okay, so I paid for this insurance. There's no way you're going to get that money. Because one, there's no way you can prove that you've been abducted. There's no way you can be impregnated by an alien. And there's no way that you can prove that you died from aliens. There's no way to prove it.
It's a scam.
Oh my God.
But they got it.
I'm in the wrong business. I want to know how much they paid. Considering the fact it's $1 million per person, I want to know.
We'll be back in a second. We're going to look something up really quick. So we're back. Apparently Geico covers alien abductions as well as vampire bites and ghost attacks and what else?
And turning into a werewolf.
That's on their website.
Oh, and fun apparently fact. In England, they've sold 30,000 insurance claims for alien abduction.
I thought it was some obscure scam artist, but apparently it's just Geico being the scam artist. All right.
You could save 15% or more on alien abduction insurance.
Lord. All right. So sorry about that, guys.
Wow.
In March of 1997, Marshall taped a video of himself called Doe's Final Exit, which you can find on YouTube. The video speaks of the mass suicide that they were preparing for and speaking of it as the only way to evacuate this earth.
Doesn't that literally go against their rules, though?
So the fourth way that you could ascend is willful exit from the body in a dignified manner. And we're going to talk about how they did that. The group had actually learned of a comet called Comet Hale-Bopp, and they were convinced that the spacecraft they were to ascend to was trailing behind the comet. They were also convinced that this was the only time they would be able to ascend, as the gates to heaven would be closing. So Marshall and 38 of his remaining followers prepared themselves by recording that goodbye message, and each one of them was able to actually record themselves saying goodbye, I'm going to heaven, like the next level, that kind of thing. That's
such a Marshall convincing these people to do that.
It is. I agree, but they also believed it wholeheartedly.
I know, but like he knows what he's doing. You know that he knows what he's doing. He knows that he's literally making this up.
Some people believe that he went through a schizophrenic episode, and they think that Bonnie was actually a nurse at a mental institution, and one of his friends was there that he knew because he was schizophrenic. So that's one reason they think this all went down.
Regardless, I still think it's a little crazy.
Yeah, it's. So the group took phenobarbital mixed with applesauce or pudding. They kind of got, a decision on that. And they washed it down with vodka.
Hold on.
They
that's a earthly pleasure that goes
that is an alcohol, yeah.
that goes against it. See, he doesn't even follow his own rules.
They also secured plastic bags around their heads to asphyxiate themselves in the event that they did not die immediately after passing out. The entire group was found dressed in identical black shirts and sweatpants, new Nike sneakers, and an armband patch that read Heaven's Gate Away Team.
Oh, I think okay. I think I remember this now. Okay.
At the end of it.
This is where like they were all in like these bunk bed things, right?
Yeah, they were in bunk beds.
Okay, I remember this now.
So once each member died, a living member would take their body and arrange it by removing the plastic bag, then posing it so that it was neatly laid on a bed. And they did have bunk beds. So they were placed on their beds with their heads facing up. Finally, they would be covered with a purple cloth to make it dignified, so that way they could ascend. It is believed that the 21 women and 18 men between the ages of 26 and 72 died over the course of 3 days, while the surviving participants stayed to clean pretty much the mess and like arrange their bodies and things like that. Marshall himself was the third to last member of the group to die on the third day. Before their deaths, Marshall sent packages to Heaven's Gate formerly affiliated members, so people who left before this all went down, and to BBC's media department. These packages all contained 2 videotapes, one being Doe's final exit, and then the farewell messages of the followers who had died. A letter was also sent to one former follower, Rio D'Angelo, which read, "We have exited our vehicles just as we entered them." D'Angelo then went to the mansion where he found the back door that was left unlocked, and he discovered all the bodies, and immediately he called authorities. He actually left an anonymous tip kind of suggesting that they do a welfare check. So we didn't tell them what happened. He did come out later to say that he was the one that got, like, he had the verified letter and everything, but he did leave an anonymous tip to do a welfare check. So
I couldn't imagine
that's a bad day.
Just walking into
that is a bad day. So some of the aftermath, a little bit about this case. After the police entered the house, the bodies were already going through decomposition, and immediately a search warrant was issued to clean up, and everything was taken care of. All 39 bodies, including Marshall's, were cremated. The media afterward motivated a copycat suicide of a man living in Marysville, California, which is super sad. But he left a note behind which said, I'm going on the spaceship with Hale-Bopp to be with those who have gone before me. At least 3 other former members of Heaven's Gate actually also committed suicide in the following months, and 2 others followed suit the next year. There are 2 people still today that do maintain the website, but pretty much that was that. And that's the Heaven's Gate cult
Jesus
organization case. Kind of a heavy one towards the end of it, but it was insane.
That was a ride.
That was a ride. There, like I said, there is so much more information on Heaven's Gate that like I couldn't even get to because it was just so much. I might have been able to make it a 2-parter, but I didn't, it's just a lot. And I didn't want to get sucked into it because it is like pretty dark.
A little bit.
But I hope you guys enjoyed it. And, let us know if you did.
I'm still like mentally processing
everything.
This. Like, that was a show.
Yeah. Well, if you guys did like that, you can find us on Facebook. On Instagram, we post all of our pictures from the case. I'll post pictures of both Marshall and Bonnie, pictures of the mansion. You can all find all of that on our Instagram, and you can find us on YouTube, all at What Sleep Podcast. You can find us on our Twitter, where we also post updates at What Sleep Pod. And don't forget, we do have a store. You guys can buy t-shirts from us. We got t-shirts, mugs, masks, iPhone cases, Android just phone cases.
Just phone cases.
Just phone cases.
It's a Samsung Android.
And if you did want 15% off of all of that merch, you can actually subscribe to our Patreon and support us directly. And we would super duper appreciate it.
teespring.com/stores/What Sleep Podcast.
Yes, that one. I always forget it. You could actually subscribe to our Patreon, and for $5 a month, you can get 15% off of your entire order. We will be adding some more perks to Patreon soon, probably within this month. for all of our Patreon subscribers. And we thank you guys so much because you guys are doing so much to support us and we appreciate it just so much.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Yeah.
Bye.